To begin with the analysis of the story, The Minister's Black Veil, let's focus first on the theme. The theme of this story is the secret sin. During the whole story, Mr. Hooper wears a black veil that covers his complete face, but the mouth and the chin. For Mr. Hooper, this veil represents the secret sin that everybody has to carry on with, and how they forget that in the eyes of God, there's nothing that can be hidden. During the whole story, Mr. Hooper remains his sin in secret, and he refuses to tell about it even to his fiancée, Elizabeth. The story was written in 1832, and it is set in a Protestant village in New England, Milford, Massachusetts, in the United States. Puritans or Protestants left England for the New World to escape persecution and judgment in the hands of others in power. The strict religious convictions and social mores of the religion require conformity and cast judgment and punishment on anyone in their congregation who failed to conform the Puritans' ideal. At that time, there were two types of Puritans: the separating ones, such as the Plymouth colonists, who believed that the Church of England was corrupt and that true Christians must separate themselves from it, and the non-separating Puritans, such as the colonists who settled the Massachusetts by colony, who believed in reform but not separation. Most Massachusetts colonies were non-separating Puritans who wished to reform the establishment church. Largely Congregationalists who believed in forming churches through voluntary contact. Reverend Hooper, his fiancée Elizabeth, Goodman Gray, Squire Saunders, and Reverend Clark are the only named characters in the Minister's Black Veil. Goodman Gray stands in for all the Puritan men in the town, and Squire Saunders is a minor character who stops inviting Reverend Hooper over for supper after the minister starts wearing the veil. Of these characters, Reverend Hooper and Elizabeth are the most important. The residents of Milford collectively play an important role in the story, effectively shining Reverend Hooper for wearing the black veil.
Minister Black Veil was written in the third person point of view, singular and plural, because the narrator talks about the minister and about people that were around him. From the beginning of the story, the author mentions the role of all the characters in the story. In other words, we can see the action of the story from the point of view of another person who knows about it. It may be that the author was inspired by a real event that was probably told to him, or he was a witness of what happened.
In any part of the story, this author mentions his name or mentions any other characteristic which he considers related with. So instead, he talked about this reverend man and about the people who is around him. By the way, some people say that the story was inspired by a man who accidentally committed a murder when he was young, and that is why he felt guilty all his life, and because of that, he wore a veil from the time of the accident until the day of his death.
This story begins in the church of Milford, where the first character to appear is the sexton who rang the bell. Second, the elders of the city who walk down the street, the children who jump happily alongside their parents, and the handsome young men looking at the girls.
Everyone entered the atrium of the church, and as they entered the church, the sexton began to ring the bell. His gaze was fixed on the door because when the minister appeared, the sexton had to stop ringing the bell. The Minister Black Veil is a story of a reverend who one day surprises his congregation by wearing a mysterious black veil over his face. When the minister got into the church, the sexton was the first person to see, and the sexton saw him and wondered, what is it that the priest has on his face? And also the whole crowd wondered the same. They wondered if that person was really the minister. In fact, the minister was wearing the same clothes he usually wore when he went to church to give the sermon. But there was something different. A black veil covered his face. The minister walked slow, looking the ground. He greeted the congregation very kindly, but they delayed to greet him back because the congregation was perplexed. People were making some different hypotheses about that situation, but the minister told them not to be afraid of that because he was the same person, the same minister, the same preacher. In fact, he was considered a good preacher. When he got to the church, he opened a book and preached something very important, which is the that secret sins that we as human beings hide, forgetting that God knows our hearts, our thinking, and He knows every secret that we can hide to other people. People couldn't understand this. However, he tries to convince them that everyone in the world has a black veil on his face. Sometimes it is visible and sometimes it is hidden. Days, weeks, and months passed, and the minister continues wearing the same black veil.
After the incident of the funeral service in which Hopper's face was almost revealed, everyone were talking about Hopper's build, but no one asked him why he is wearing it. Some believed that Hopper was insane, but most said that he had committed a horrible crime and he was atoning for it by hiding his face. The only person in Milford who wasn't afraid of asking Hopper was his fiancée Elizabeth, but Hopper refused to answer that question to his fiancée, and she decided to break off their engagement. Hopper's build makes him an extremely impressive preacher. Before he wore it, his sermons were mild and pleasant, but people started to claim that the sight of Hopper's black build converted them into Christianity, and sinners on their deathbed asked to see Mr. Hopper. Years had passed and Hopper grows old and sick. He is on the deathbed, nursed by Elizabeth, and he is surrounded by a reverend named Clark. Hopper shouts that his bill was never believed on Earth. Confused, Clark asks Hopper what crime has caused Hopper to hide his face. In response, Hopper asks why Milford has been afraid of him for so long, and says that they should be afraid of each other. He can only become them, he continues, when all humans are completely honest and open with each other. With his dying words, Hopper says that he looks around and sees a black bill on every face, shocked and impressed. The clergyman Barry Hopper, with his face still covered. Undoubtedly, Hopper dies with the belt on his face. He was surrounded by the tragedy during his life, and as he said, we all have a black belt in our faces. That means that we all are culprits. We have things that we need to hide from the other people. So that is taking us to the next stage, in which we are going to give our opinion about the story.
Last but not least, we're going to share with you the 3 theories behind the minister's black pill. The first one is that the minister was guilty of committing a crime. Do you remember the girl from the funeral service? We as a group thought that the minister murdered her. Probably they had a relationship or something, and she was going to say everything to the town because the reverend had done something wrong. So he decided to murder her to keep the secret hid. That's why he was using the black pill, to hide the shame of committing a crime. The second one is that the Reverend Hopper had lost his faith. As we know, the Reverend was afraid of being alone. He told this to Elizabeth, his fiancée. Probably he discovered something pretty horrible that made him lose his faith, and he decided that he was scared, so he wanted to hide his face. And the third one, and the most interesting one, is that, in fact, the minister was right. We all have a black belt in our faces and we are hiding our sins from each other. We know that we are humans and we commit mistakes every day. But why would we wear a black belt? Because we are not good enough to recognize our mistakes, and we are always to be ashamed of them. So we decide to hide them in our faces. We lie to ourselves, and when we lie to ourselves, we are the most dangerous people because we continue doing the same mistakes. That is what the Reverend Hopper meant when he was using his black belt on his face. Well guys, that was all for us. Thank you for your attention. It was pretty nice to talk about the minister's black belt. It was such a nice story, and we hope you continue reading more stories like these ones. Thank you for your attention, guys.